phone? No, we're not. Okay. Who's out there? Who's out there?
What's your son's name?
Devin.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. We are reconvening the regular Board of Education meeting for Thursday, June 28th, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask Devin to lead us in the pledge. We'll all do it together with you, Devin. Ready?
You want to say pledge of allegiance? Just like in school.
Okay, just put your hand here and say, I pledge. Okay, ready, here we go. Okay. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, very good. So now we go to announcement of action taken in closed session. E1, Government Code Section 58918. I'm sorry, I was supposed to do roll call by going right through there. Sorry. Okay, roll call. Sarah Kirby Gonzalez. Here. Kobe Pizzotti.
Here.
Jackie Wong.
Here,
And I am
in person.
Hey, yes. Okay. Very good. So now announcement of actions taken in closed session. Here we go. E1, Government Code Section 48918, Student Discipline, Case Number 1718-A. Student Discipline, Case 1718A was discussed in closed session. The board has given direction and will be taking action on this case later on the agenda. E2, Government Code Section 54957.6, Conference with Labor Negotiators, Superintendent Marie Nakamura, Legal Counsel. Information was received and discussed. E3, Government Code 54956.9 D2, Conference with Legal Counsel, Potential Litigation, one case. Information was received and discussed. Okay, so now we will go to action items. Are there any changes on the agenda before we approve this evening's agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to move board comments back up to where they were originally into right by the WSTA and CSEA reports. Because the following item after that is the second hearing or the second public hearing on the pre-map input on trustee areas, I attended one of our public forums on this, and so did Trustee Wong, and we'd probably like to be able to speak to that as a segue going into that next item.
For this one session, because after that, we really want to get on with, the board's business, and I do want to, as a new format, use this board comments and leave them at the end, but I understand what you're saying about this. The recommendation to have board comments towards the end was that we could get done with the business of the district and then leave these comments. It's the reason that they were moved over. It was something that the public seemed to really respond to well. There were recommendations made by the public, and that's the reason these comments were pushed over to the end.
Okay, well, I understand that. I would still like to move R to right in front of L.
For the purpose of this meeting, I'm going to say that that's fine, but I would like from now on the board comments to be at the very end, because I know we really need to get the business of the district done. So for this one meeting, I will agree that we can do that.
So you're making the motion you're making the motion, you're seconding? President Alcala?
For this, I will second it for this one meeting. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, also vote aye for this one meeting. Thank you.
And then we also have a public comment.
Thank you. Okay, we have a public comment from Don Stauffer. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I would like to request the board to move 04, one part of the consent agenda, off the consent agenda for comments.
Okay, I'm sorry. Which one was that?
04.
The board certified behavior analyst.
Hang on a second.
Okay, can I get a motion for that?
God, I gotta put my glasses on.
I'll make a motion to move 04 to action item.
Okay, and can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, all right, Mr. Stauffer. Don, thank you. Okay, let's go back. Do we have any other? No, we're good?
Oh, wait, no, L.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, that's L.
That's,
Yeah.
sorry, folks, we have a lot of blue slips this evening, so just
Not on
making
the-
sure we're not missing
not on the
anyone.
agenda.
Okay, all right.
Public comment?
Oh, is there?
On the agenda?
On public comments?
We're not there yet.
Oh,
On the agenda. I thought.
I'm sorry. We're looking through them right now. There are quite a few up here.
Do we have a few blue slips on I that we missed? Did you submit a blue slip on I?
On I?
On the approval of the agenda?
I've got a consent agenda item that it might need to be, there's something wrong in the meeting minutes.
We're going to go ahead and do
We can
that at
go-
consent.
vote for consent.
Right. Thank you, thank you. Okay.
Is there something that you wanted to recommend pulling, or?
On the
it's
consent
on the
agenda?
consent agenda item?
There's an error in the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that was fine.
It's not.
So it's the old meeting minutes.
Okay.
All right, all
So
right.
no ayes, no
Okay,
more comments
no
on
more.
I?
No, so.
For the
so
public, any more comments on I?
None?
Okay.
So let's go ahead and go with approval of the agenda. May I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve with the item pulled.
All right, may I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, first by Jackie Wong and second by Sarah Kirby Gonzalez. Thank you. Okay, communication and celebrations. There are no communications from departments or schools in this meeting. Okay, we're going to letter K, association reports, WSTA. Stauffer. Thank you.
Hello again. Given this week's Supreme Court decisions, we're definitely entering into some new territory. On the surface, the Janus decision would seem to make the work of our association harder, as the number of individuals who opt out of the union may probably increase. On the other hand, it's an interesting note. The biggest labor actions that we've seen in this country have been in places where the labor unions are weakest. So the effect on us and where we go from here is going to be interesting. In the majority of the opinion, Samuel Alito wrote, "In addition to affecting how public money is spent, union speech in collective bargaining addresses many other important matters. We have often recognized that such speech occupies the highest rung of the hierarchy of the First Amendment values and merits special protection." I'm not sure how far the statement is going to lead us. Does this mean that me as a member of a bargaining unit, I can now get up in front of my classroom and say, I think state mandated testing is a bunch of crap and you guys don't have to take the test? And I mean, we're entering into some uncharted territory, and I don't know where it's all going to lead. And I believe the consequences of this decision are going to take us into many unintended consequences. And so that's all I wanted to say tonight. Thank you. And I hope you guys are having a good summer.
Thank you, Don. Okay, we will now move to CSEA reports. Do we have anyone? Okay, we do not. Okay, so we will now move to the board comments. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start off with Jackie Wong.
Hello.
You want?
Hello, I'm on. Good to see everybody's faces and not on the little screen on my computer in a random place. I don't have a lot to report on. Trustee Pizzotti and I did actually participate in the forum, the first forum for CVRA this past week. We had a handful of people show up, and there is a letter actually on our desk to be transparent from, Yes, thank you. That we're happy to kind of post on public, one of our attendees' recommendations on how we should develop this. I'm actually excited and I'm happy that we're actually having these forums and wanted to encourage more people to get engaged, right? There's a lot of questions about what CVRA means and what it means for the public and how to draw these lines. And we actually strongly encourage full participation from the community at every step of the way and actually requested that people show up today to actually participate in that. And so hopefully later more community members will come in and tell us kind of their thoughts about the maps being drawn and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think it was a healthy conversation. We had a really tight schedule and we followed it. And so that is, I don't have a whole lot to say. I'll comment a little bit later on some things that are on the agenda. But yeah, I'm just happy to be back and be back on the dais and not on a phone. So.
Okay, very good. Sarah Kirby-Gonzalez?
Oh, wait. Maybe. Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah. Jackie wasn't through.
No.
I apologize. I'm sorry, Jackie.
I also wanted to celebrate that the governor signed the budget yesterday. And so we're getting a little bit more money overall for school districts. I think there's also $44 million in one-time money for school-based, potentially to be utilized for school-based health centers, including mobile clinics that LEAs will be eligible for, and that's for planning. So I'm just going to put that out there in the world, if that's something that we want, and Jerry's gone, isn't he? About something that if we've ever kind of thought about wellness centers or planning, and it's primarily for planning, and I know that Trustee Pizzotti has talked about that in the past, something for us to think about, an opportunity there, as well as we also received in the budget, there is statewide monies for comprehensive sex education, which is a big win for, for a lot of the work in California. So, yeah, I know that we were all kind of on pins and needles the last time we said, okay, our budget was based on May revise, which was a little bit less money. So I'm excited that the governor finally signed with a number of other things in there. So, looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Oh, Paul's going to come up.
No? Okay. There went Paul. Okay. Okay. All right. Sarah Kirby-Gonzalez?
Thank you. I'm also looking forward to seeing that budget, and so thank you for those comments. There's a lot going on in our district right now this summer, even though it seems like a lot of us are on vacation. We have staff working all over. There's summer school going on. Our police and fire are working hard too, partnering, and they have our kids in academies, and I'm looking forward to hopefully swinging by after I pick up my daughter from zoo camp, but to see the graduation that's happening tomorrow over at the police department. And so thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to everyone who's working hard this summer behind the scenes. And also, just as we look at where we are with this world, and today, even the news, whenever we turn on the news channels and see what's going on, I think this summer is a time where we can take pause and we can hug our kids and be there for our family, and because there's a lot of hard stuff going on right now all over. And so I just want to remind everybody of that as we move on. And then also when I think about some of the comments that are made in the public too, and I want you to know that we are accessible. All of our emails are online. I'm happy to give you my phone number, and we're accessible to talk and to have conversations, because there's a lot of anger in our world right now, and we're seeing some of that here too. And happy to talk and have a conversation. It's a lot healthier. It gets us a lot further. Then you can understand decisions, and we can go back and forth in a way that we can't always do in this room. But thank you to the people who are here this evening to talk, and thank you to my colleagues as well.
Thank you. Kobe Pizzotti?
Thank you. So yeah, I was with Trustee Wong at the Bright campus for a community forum on the district maps that we're going to be potentially looking at someday, and listening to what the community had to say. And we did get a letter from one of the community members, and I think there was about 6 people that showed up overall, 6 or 7, about that, that we talked to, and this is something that I kind of do for a living, and I have the ability to look at maps and look at breakdowns of, where certain areas are and what our natural boundary lines are, what are the communities of interest. See if we can keep, certain blocks of demographics together in a way that doesn't disenfranchise them. And so I think after having that discussion, some of the community members really found that there is some knowledge to be gained here, and they need to do some research. And they had interest actually in the idea of getting their hands on a map and kind of working with it and seeing how they can shape and mold it, and having the ability to draw one up themselves. And so. I gave them a website that they could go to, and it's and it's something that I've done and played with quite a bit. It's a GIS website that actually allows you to drop pins and figure out exactly how many people are in a census block, because this is basically done. All the maps are going to be done on the census block, and so we figure out like how many people. We've got, say, 50,000 people in our city. We've got five board members. You're gonna have to draw up into 10,000 member blocks or 10,000 individual blocks. So basically that's what we did, and it was a good conversation. I think everybody understood, that we need to hear more information. We certainly need to see more participation, and as Trustee Wong said, we definitely want more people here, not less. We need to hear from more community members, not less. Basically, it was just the plaintiffs that showed up, and I mean, I certainly don't mind hearing from them because I would like to hear what their side of the issue is, but I would also like to hear from more people in the community as well. So, in that sense, I think that was a very interesting. An interesting conversation, and it was very good and healthy to have, and I look forward to having more of them. And if anybody would like to discuss, this with me, they certainly can by emailing or giving me a call. I believe my phone number as well is on the district website, or email me, and my phone number is on the signature line. So. I'm more than willing to talk to people about that. And then I kind of wanted to also talk about or touch on something that Dawn mentioned with the Janus ruling. I'm a labor lobbyist, so for a public employee labor union. And this ruling is going to have a dramatic impact on the way, employees and employers interact. It's going to have a dramatic impact on the shape and the scope of the whole country, or at least the 24 states that had laws that allowed fair share fee payers to actually pay for their fair share of the bill of negotiations. Now they're just going to be free riders, or freeloaders, as I like to call them. So it was a really tragic day for the worker and the working class and for working families yesterday. I don't mind if I say I shed a little tear. It was very dramatic in my office. But on top of that, something else happened, and that was the retirement of Justice Kennedy. And while I maybe only agreed with him on 10% of the issues, there were two very big issues that I did agree with him on. And he was a civil libertarian, and civil libertarian from Sacramento, no less, that I did agree with him on, and that was his defense of Roe, as well as his defense of marriage equality. And from that, I cannot believe that we are now going to see the court slam to the far right. It's already been said by the vice president that that's the way that this is going to go, and this is something that I cannot believe is going to happen. So I'll get off my political soapbox now, but I had to say it. It was a tragic day yesterday for many, many people.
Okay. Yes, we do want to encourage everyone to please come to the district forums for the maps. I believe the next one is going to be August 22nd. Sarah, are you in that one? I know I am. Right, Sarah and I will both be there. And the great thing about the way these hearings have been set up, these forums have been set up, is we do have some in the morning. I believe the last one was in the morning, so it affords people who maybe some of the members of our community, that are stay at home, to have an opportunity to attend. Maybe they don't go out in the evenings. And then we have some in the evenings, which will be a great opportunity for those folks that work all day and are able to attend. So we have tried to accommodate everyone. And you've heard from the different board members. We want to be as accessible to you as possible. We all have our emails on there. I can tell you, I get a little behind on emails, so the best thing to do is text me. All of us have our number, and I will respond to a text right away. I think most people do. So either way, please contact us with any concerns that you have, with any recommendations. We want to be as accessible to everyone as possible and hear your concerns. And just to let you know, I've been taking my granddaughter around. She's going to be attending high school here. I've mentioned it a few times. She is really looking forward to the different clubs that River City has, and she's met some of the teachers, so she's really excited about that. And that's the end of my report. Thank you. So now we will move on to public comments. I'm going to read this first. At this time, members of the public may address the board on topics that are under the jurisdiction of the board and are not on the agenda, although the board, by law, may not take action at this meeting. The board may limit the total time for public input on any topic to 20 minutes unless it chooses to waive the item limit for a particular item. Individual speakers may be limited to 3 minutes to comment on any topic. Public comments consisting of individual charges, complaints, or derogatory remarks about any district employee are requested to be submitted in writing to the administration in accordance with the district's complaint procedure. We do recognize that for a lot of people, commenting before the board and the audience and the people watching at home on television is a nerve-wracking experience. So to try and make that as easy as possible, we do ask there not be any applause or booing or catcalling or other demonstrations to maintain a civil discourse here in chambers. The board respects the right of members of the public to speak to us regarding matters on the agenda and other matters within the jurisdiction of the board. However, it is important for members of the public to recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own children made during a public meeting may be legally actionable as a violation of student privacy. Both state and federal law prohibit the board and others from discussing confidential student information in open session. To this end, be advised that if you reference a student's name other than your own student, you will be out of order and your comments may not be protected by the privileges that protect public speech. You could be found liable for such comments in legal proceedings. Furthermore, it is important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against district employees or others, even those made in public board meetings, may be actionable civil defamation. As such, the board reminds the public that the district has existing board policy that allows the public to lodge a complaint against a district employee. This policy provides a comprehensive procedure for reviewing and responding to public complaints. This process provides a more thorough opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. So now we have some public comments. Martha Hanson. Okay. Martha Hanson.
I'm short. Good afternoon, or evening, I guess it would be. So when I was here a few weeks ago, I spoke to some incidences that some bullying things that have happened to my son at his now old school. We switched schools. A part of my concerns when I spoke last was that he wasn't being properly educated. And I'm not going into detail, that's not what I'm here for, but this is his report card, and there's not a single grade on this report card here. And in the first trimester teacher comments, it states, and I'm going to leave his name out, but it states, first trimester, "It is a pleasure to have," my son's name, "in my class. He has made tremendous improvements behaviorally." I can't say that word. "I am looking forward to working with him academically." That's in the first trimester. Second and third trimester has 0 comments. There's not a single grade. Last time my son received a grade, he was in kindergarten. But I come here, and I don't come here to complain. I do not raise a concern unless I'm willing to find at least a handful of ways to fix what I'm complaining about. So I did just that. I called a couple companies, and I told them my concerns, that our children in special education are not being properly, we'll say, taken care of in our district. I know budgets, I know things, are tight, and so I found out through a few meetings that our teachers are being made sometimes to provide things like these seats here, the wiggle seats, I'm sure you're familiar with as a teacher. I reached out to a couple companies, and they were more than happy to send me a lot of products for free to help our kids. So I'm running short on time, but I have started a program where I will be reaching out to everyone on the board probably mid next week to let you know what I'm going to be doing. But I will be helping our teachers out and providing a lot of products that will ultimately help our special education kids out. And I'll tell you a lot more about it in an email probably mid next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Danny Langford.
Good evening. So a couple of comments. Maybe people don't come to these meetings because of how you treat some of us, and they watch it from home. It's a really sad state of affairs when a trustee quits or resigns and she publicly cites because she's bullied by some of her fellow board members. You are board members, not someone's employees. Really, you're going to write somebody up or whatever. I just am blown away by all of this. This conduct is frankly outrageous. After you came out of closed session at the last meeting, I thought for a moment I was at a hockey game and that President Acala was the goalie fending off Bizzotti and Ms. Kirby Gonzalez in a penalty kick. The bullying that many of us watched that night was appalling, and I am not the only one in the community that watched this at home that is very frustrated. I don't get it. With us talking about student bullying and then to watch you board members bully each other, it's not okay in any way, shape, or form. You got problems, take it behind closed doors. We don't need to see it. And even then, it shouldn't be. Also, how things were handled with the consent agenda at the last meeting was absolutely ridiculous. For the superintendent to stop President Acala from pulling items off the consent agenda only to later say in the meeting, basically, my bad, I got it wrong. You could have done it the way you were going to do it. Seriously? Brown Act violations aren't cool. And that's what that was. And wow, Mr. Bizzotti, you really need to move board comments up for your political opinions after you slammed President Acala last meeting for touting about, you said that she said something at a commencement speech. What's the difference? I didn't hear anything in your comment that's going to affect something on an item you're going to be discussing where you should have been discussing it. Thank you.
Laura Jameson. Okay. Laura Jameson.
Good evening. I was going to make a comment about the consent issue from the last meeting, but it sounds like items are able to be pulled from consent based on that previous comment, and I think my hopes was that that can be done. I think that's why there was some confusion on my part tonight. because I did not watch the whole meeting last week. So as long as items can be pulled at the time of the consent agenda, I'm fine with that. Another item is on June 11th, there was a meet and greet that Trustee Cruz and Trustee Alcala did, and now that one of those is no longer here, my hopes is that we can still have 2 trustees from the board and still have these meet and greets. I think having the formal comment here, it doesn't really allow for dialogue, and I think this community needs more dialogue, and so I think there was a lot of good conversation that night, and I think we need more of that in this community. Because I agree, there's a lot of bullying, and just social media is just a horrible thing, and I think we need more face-to-face dialogue. So, and then one question, I was looking at the city council calendar, and they have all the meetings on it. I noticed for July, there's not a city board 2x2, so I was just wondering when the next city school district 2x2 is. All right, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, just writing a quick note here. And okay, the others are 4. Okay, very good, thank you. So now we will move on to public hearing M1. Okay, open. Second public hearing, pre-map input on trustee areas.
Good evening, board members. My name is William Tunick, attorney with Dennis Walliver Kelly. Glad to be back here again this evening to discuss the status of the trustee area map boundary drawing process. I just thought I would open up or help to open up the public hearing by giving a little bit of background as far as how the board got to this point and where we'll be going, or where the board will be going from here. And then obviously the public hearing is for public input tonight. So just by way of background, the board has been actually addressing this issue since January of this year. The superintendent, along with the board president, asked me to come and talk to the board in open session about this matter in January, and just a little bit about the CVRA and trustee areas. We had that discussion in January. That was followed by a letter from community members actually I believe it was on March 5th that it was received by the district, asking or threatening, depending on how you look at it, the board to make the transition from at-large to trustee area elections in order to avoid violating the California Voting Rights Act. After the board, actually I should stop and say, due to the timing of that letter and because we had an election coming up in 2018, November of 2018, logistically, it was essentially impossible at that point to make the transition in time for 2018. There's several other districts, or at least one that I can think of, that received letters about the same time, a little bit earlier, and most of those are holding off just because there's not only a board process where you need to have public input and discussion and deliberation, but even once the board's done with this process, there has to go to the County Committee on School District Organization. They have to meet and approve it, and then it either has to go to an election or the State Board of Education. And you have to do that all before something gets put on the ballot, which means that before the election gets called, which is, I think this year, July 7th, I want to say. So to do that between March 5th and July 7th was probably going to be difficult, if not actually impossible at that point. So I did want to just quickly mention, so the letter came March 5th, but by April 12th, the board adopted a resolution, and what that resolution said was that the board intended to make the transition from at-large to by trustee areas, and it would begin that process. On April 26th and May 10th, we talked a little bit about what that process would look like and developed a timeline that included the community workshops that you've mentioned, as well as public hearings and kind of this whole process. And then picked a demographer who I'll introduce here in a few minutes at your May 24th meeting. And then you had your first pre-map hearing January 14th. You had your community forum, and then you're going to have your second pre-map hearing tonight. And one thing I did want to make clear, because I think sometimes it's not necessarily logical on its face. The law actually requires the board to hold 2 of these public hearings before any maps are drawn. So you, in a sense, you've got to go through this process and get past these 2, and then we can get to maps. And so we'll be talking a little bit later tonight about how that process starts, and the next set of hearings and community meetings will have, the board and the community will have those draft maps to take a look at and to provide feedback on. I know it's a little bit, in the abstract, it's a little bit difficult. So that will be coming. This process will continue. The schedule right now is to conclude the process, adopt maps, or have maps for consideration in September. And I think, again, the board's concern was to make sure there was enough time for public comment, try not to do too much of it over the summer, and conclude it once we get back to school in the fall. So with that, that brings you, as I mentioned tonight, is your second pre-map public hearing, and then I'll come back up and talk about the next agenda item after that. So, thank you.
Okay, we do, oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Yes. Okay, right.
Wait,
We do
no.
have a public comment.
I thought you were going to
You're the
introduce.
next item.
No, we'll come back next time.
He's the next
Yeah,
item.
he's next item.
Yeah, you're next.
Yeah, okay. Thank
you for your
you.
eagerness, though.
Okay, Laura Jameson. Thank you.
Hello again. I think one of the comments I just wanted to make for the hearing is that as the boundaries start coming out, that we compare the trustee area boundaries to the school boundaries, so that maybe one school does not have a dedicated trustee, but all the other schools have their school split up to multiple trustees. I think it just needs to be fair for all the different schools in the community, that they're all split up or they're all cohesive within their trustee area. It needs to be fair. And then I don't know if there's been a decision on 5 versus 7 trustees. If possible, I don't know if we can see maps giving both alternatives, just so the community can help make decisions on that. Those are my comments. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And one.
All right, so now we go to information discussion items.
Can I was just going to say, are we still in
Well,
the hearing? In
We're on
the-
M1, yeah.
We're on M1.
Right, so I just wanted to make sure I was able to, because we were doing trustee area maps process and discussion, so I wanted to make sure I was able to read this letter that was handed to us during the community forum. So it was signed by Ed Castaneda, he's one of the plaintiffs, but it was penned by Carlos Alcala. So I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to get this on the record, so it's in the discussion. It says, "Dear Board, we are the residents of the Broderick and Bright neighborhoods of West Sacramento. We thank you for taking the time to come to our neighborhood. We completely support the single-member districts initiative. The maps that are drawn up for our electoral district should include everything north of Sacramento Boulevard in a single district to the extent possible. This would put the neighborhoods surrounding Elkhorn, Riverbank in this electoral district. A second district should include the neighborhoods of Westfield and Westmore Oaks. This would include the state streets. We defer to the people in the remainder of the school district to determine their own neighborhood district, but we suggest a third district should be the Stonegate neighborhoods, a fourth district should be Southport, a fifth should be in Bridgeway. Please add our letter to the minutes of this meeting and provide it to the entire board. This will ensure that Broderick and Bright are always represented on the school board. Respectfully, Ed Castaneda." So I wanted to make sure that we were able to get that on the record and make sure that it was included so everybody had a chance to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a real quick, it's Castorina, Mr.
Castorina,
Castorina. Thank you.
It's hard to read his handwriting.
Okay. Okay, so now we will go, where am I? Information discussion items and 1 trustee area boundary map, process, presentation, and discussion.
Good evening again. I have some good news, which is for those of you who are tired of hearing me speak, I'm going to introduce someone who's going to do most of the talking from now on. Who will do a much better job than I did. Anyway, so I did want to, as I mentioned before, the board, after making the decision to begin this process, we did an RFP, a request for proposals for demography services to assist the board in drawing the trustee area maps. We brought back those proposals to the board meeting, and the board selected National Demographics Corporation to assist it in this process. So I'm pleased to be able to introduce tonight the founder and president of National Demographics Corporation, Doug Johnson. He's going to has a presentation, talk a little bit about the process, some of the demographics of the districts, and I think start the discussion about where we go from here, where the board goes from here as far as starting to draw maps. So with that, I will ask Doug to come up. I know he was anxious to get up here already. So.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate you having me tonight. Again, I'm president of National Demographics. I'm Doug Johnson. As these hearings go on, you may see me or my vice president, Justin Levitt. We may be, depending on scheduling things, you may actually like having him better. He, for a couple of years, lived in Natomas, and he knows all the neighborhoods. So when he sees those letters, he knows just where you're talking about, whereas I'm Southern Californian. But pleasure to be with you for this. Just very briefly, mainly for the public's awareness, and people are more and more aware of this these days, the district is certainly not alone in facing California Voting Rights Act challenges. We're now at least 165 school districts that have changed their election systems. And actually in the last year and a half, the main focus has been on the city front. Before this law came into place, we had 29 cities that had district elections.
So sorry.
That's okay. Before this law came into being, we had 29 cities that had district elections. We've now had over 90, I think we're at 95 now actually, that have had to switch. So we've gone from 29 to almost 130 now. So it's a very wide-ranging law. It mentions one county board of supervisors because there was only one county left that wasn't by district before this law kicked in. And just to reinforce, as I'm sure you've talked about already, it's not that 300 jurisdictions in California were violating anyone's voting rights or civil rights or doing anything discriminatory. What's driving this massive, as I've called it, a quiet tsunami of change is the financial danger. So the settlements that have happened in the cases so far have been so overwhelming that everyone's just switching over for the most part. We'll give kudos to the district for, there are a lot of required outreach and hearings, and the district is going even above and beyond that. So kudos to you for getting the engagement. And actually at this stage, Mr. Tuning mentioned this is a little bit of an odd process where we have to have 2 hearings before there's any draft maps. So 6 or 7 people at a meeting is actually quite good for turning out these meetings. Once you have draft maps, then people have something to react to and express their preferences, so you tend to get more participation then. And so you can see the process we'll be going through of, this is the second hearing, and then you get to the draft maps. So after this, we'll start taking into account the few comments we've gotten so far, and then we'll get draft maps that will start the real back and forth, I think, with the public and community. And I do want to emphasize the draft maps are just that. They're to get the discussion going. And our goal, so everyone understands when they see them, our goal with the draft maps that we draw, in addition to anything you get from the public, is to give a range of options. So we don't say, here's what we think is your best map, and here's a couple more. It's, here's a map that, as you just had a speaker mention, here's a map that tries to keep each attendance zone together as much as you can. Here's a map that tries to ensure that each attendance zone has 2 or 3 board members to illustrate very different choices. So I'll talk a little bit more about that at the time. But they'll be back and forth. Happy to see you making the choice to carry this into the fall, because it is always easier for school districts to get families and parents involved once school's back. In terms of protected class demographics, one of the challenges often for people who are very involved in school districts is you all know the student demographics really well. Unfortunately, students, with the exception of a few high school seniors, are not old enough to vote. And this law is all about the voting age population. So there are 2 numbers we'll focus on. One is the total population, because we have to have an equal number of total population by the 2010 census data in each trustee area. And then the citizen voting age population, because that's what the courts look at as your eligible voters for federal Voting Rights Act compliance. And so from citizen voting age, we're not so much worried about the numbers as we are the percentages. We're looking at, can you get a majority blank African American, Latino, Asian American trustee area.
Can I ask you a question about this? Because oftentimes Asian Americans are lumped into one kind of category, and we have a lot of Southeast Asians in this community. That's not considered a protected class in CVRA standards. Is it only these ethnic profiles that are considered in your analysis?
Well, Asian Americans as a group, so all the subgroups within it would be considered a protected class. And one of the interesting things to this law is groups that are small numbers aren't really going to factor in, because even if you draw a trustee area, it keeps them together, they'll still be swamped.
Okay.
So it is.
But if you draw a trustee area that actually splits, say, the Southeast Asian community, that makes a difference, right?
Yes, unless, and I'll come back later too, unless they want to be split. We do get that sometimes, but I'll talk about that later.
Interesting.
So these are your Voting Rights Act compliance numbers that your legal counsel and I will focus on when we look at maps that come from the public and when we draw our maps to make sure they comply with the requirements. We have a lot more data, and I'm not going to go through all this, but you can later on.
Hang on, because I want to see this. Keep talking, but I want to.
So we have, in the top left is the data you just looked at, and then we have surname data, surname-based turnout and registration data from the state. And then from the Census Bureau, we have what's called the American Community Survey, which looks at gives language spoken at home, income numbers, things you might look at to try to identify communities of interest. It's not required to use them as definitions of community of interest, but all this data is available, and for every trustee area and every map, you'll get these breakdowns. So if members of the public want to focus on, let's try to get a renter-heavy trustee area, or try to get a other language spoken at home heavy area, that is available. One of the challenges, given you have a large Russian population here, we dealt with a similar issue down in El Cajon where they had a large Arabic speaking population. And I have to give the city manager credit. He figured out how to spot them because they're hard to identify in the data. The language spoken at home tends to be the best data we can get at, and I have a map that I'll show you the Russian speakers because unfortunately it's lumped into other, but other tends to be the largest group.
Is it other or is it Caucasian? Would it be under white?
No, it's language spoken at home. So we're talking language, other languages.
But I mean, in terms of their total population, where would they fall in the classification?
White.
White, okay.
Yeah, so they're not going to show up in the CVAP data or any of that.
Okay.
But and same thing, it's interesting. I'm actually from Glendale where you have a large Armenian population, El Cajon had Arabic, all white, according to the Census Bureau. And one of the things I always note too is you can see you have 19% speaking Spanish at home, 6% speaking an Asian language at home, 14% speaking another language at home. And then the other number that comes next, the Census Bureau tells us there are two language fluency categories. Speaks English very well or speaks English less than very well. But note how the less than very well number is only 17%. So people sometimes look at Spanish or other languages and say they only speak Spanish. Those numbers are much higher than the 17%. These are families that are choosing to speak another language at home, but also speak English perfectly well. So it is important not to confuse those two numbers. So all this data is available, and if you and residents of the public want to look at this as we go through it, it's all going to be available for every trustee area. Which starts to get us into the criteria. There are two sets of criteria. So we have requirements. The federal laws are things you have to do. We have to have an equal number of people with a very small plus or minus on that. We have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, which means not dividing those protected class neighborhoods in a way that dilutes their voting strength. Essentially, if there's a large enough population to be a majority or a significant share of 2 seats, well, then you're going to divide them to give them, that's not diluting their voting strength. If you're getting them 2 seats.
So is it possible to have the same number of people from the census tract in one district, yet have one, say, have 8,000 registered voters, while the other one have maybe 600 registered voters?
Well, you won't see that.
I mean, it won't be that dramatic, but I'm saying
yes.
it's like you could potentially see that.
You will see it, without a doubt, yeah. And that's expected and normal.
Okay.
And then no racial gerrymandering. So I'll show you some maps next showing where the ethnic concentrations are, but we can't draw by colors, essentially. Race can be a consideration, but it cannot be the predominant consideration.
I'm sorry, I thought that was the whole thing with the CVRA, that had to be, that's
right.
the reason.
You're right on my next point, which because it does get confusing. So whether or not you're in compliance with CVRA is 100% race. If you're in compliance or in violation of CVRA and have to switch to districts, that's just a pure race question. When we're actually drawing the maps, we switch gears. And so now we're talking neighborhoods. Everything is neighborhoods, neighborhoods, neighborhoods now. If a neighborhood is made up heavily of a protected class, that's when the Federal Voting Rights Act kicks in. You can't divide that neighborhood. Okay. But it is a difficult transition to make. So now we go from race being the only factor to race cannot be the predominant factor. Now we're talking neighborhoods. And we want to avoid dividing all neighborhoods, except those that want to be divided. But if you divide a neighborhood that's heavily a protected class, then you get in trouble. Mm-hmm. So and you'll see the neighborhoods in just a second in the next slide. So your legal counsel and I will be advising you a lot on that and looking at the maps and flagging them for anyone that sends in a map from the public too to say, hey, this might be a problem. So those are requirements. Where the decisions come in and where the public input comes in is what we call traditional criteria. So which map best balances these? These are not requirements, they're goals. And so we want to respect communities of interest, and I'll talk a little more of that in a second. We want the districts or trustee areas in this case to be compact, contiguous, and follow major roads so that they're easy for the voters to understand. If they want to go walk and knock on doors for a candidate, we want them to be easy for them to know which doors to knock on.
And so, just like the speaker from the community said earlier, the boundaries that, for this school district, I guess, that are adhered to for sending kids to a certain school district or to a certain school would also be taken into consideration?
That is the most common definition of a community of interest in schools,
Okay.
Definitely. It doesn't have to be, but it almost always is. The other two factors, one is respect for the voters' wishes. So the courts have said it's perfectly fine and actually expected to the degree possible, and remember this is a goal, not a requirement, to avoid putting multiple trustees in one area. And the public always reacts kind of from a gut instinct of that's incumbency protection. It really is for the voters to say to the voters, if it's possible within these other criteria, we want the voters to decide whether a given trustee has earned re-election. Rather than my pen coming through and saying, it doesn't matter if the voters think 2 or 3 of you have earned re-election, you can only re-elect 1. So that's where that comes from, and that's why the courts have approved it. Again, these are goals and options. You don't have to look at that, but we always recommend looking at it, and it's perfectly fine to the degree possible. And then planned future growth is in italics and gray here because these lines will only be in place for 1 election. So we're not really looking at future growth. But I don't want to surprise people when you come back in 2021 when that will be a significant consideration because then you'll be drawing lines that will be in place for 10 years. So it is a traditional criteria, but it's not one that we'll be factoring this time. So getting to those neighborhoods. This is census data at the census block level. You can see essentially a census block is a city block. And so in terms of heavily Latino neighborhoods, we're really looking at the corridor north of Highway 50, essentially going up to the railroad in the west side as you get over towards I-80, and then up to Lighthouse Drive. You can see the yellows and the pinks and the reds. Those are your majority Latino neighborhoods or majority Latino city blocks. So you're kind of getting 2 neighborhoods, I think, one below the railroad and one above the railroad. But those are the areas where we want to be careful how we draw the lines so we don't dilute their voting strength. In terms of Asian Americans, you really get 2 pockets where they're still not a majority, but definitely more concentrated than other areas. One in the east side over above Linden, and then in the southwest below Marshall. You can see there are a couple of blocks farther north that are red, meaning 75% Asian American or more. This is the trick with maps, though. 75% of 3 people. Right. So that's why we look more for a neighborhood that is all highlighted.
3 Asian Americans in West Sacramento.
No, oh no, I mean,
Household
I mean in those red, yeah. If you look closely, you might spot the 2 red census blocks in there. Those are red because there are only 3 people in those 2 census blocks or that kind of thing. We're more interested in the blues because that's where there are large numbers of Asian Americans that will influence how the district goes or the trustee area goes. I did look at African Americans as well, but there are no census blocks where African Americans are more than 25% of the eligible voters. So you do have, as you saw in those earlier numbers, you do have about 5% African American, but they're spread throughout the school district. They're not concentrated in any one neighborhood. The trick is that data by race we can figure out or we can estimate by census block. The other socioeconomic data, like here's your other language spoken at home, is by census tract. So this is not nearly as precise data. So you can see the light blue, which is 20 to 30% of people in that northern census tract speak other language, likely Russian, at home. The darker blue is 10 to 20%, and the purple is less than 10%. So that northern strip, I'm sure you probably know it even more precisely than the tract data reflects, is where the Russian speakers are concentrated. But be sure to know that the boundaries of that are the census tract. It's not actually identifying the precise boundaries of where that community lives. And then I've hinted at this a little bit. So what are communities of interest? It really is whatever the people in a neighborhood say is their community of interest. So if people, when we're talking about schools, they're talking about their school attendance area, in particular elementary school attendance areas. But it can be whatever. It can be everyone identifies as the park that's in the middle of their neighborhood, or, around between two major roads. Or it can be socioeconomic. Some people identify by renters or income or language spoken at home. All these are legitimate considerations. But there are two questions about communities of interest. Number one, what is it? What is your neighborhood? And number two, do you want to be concentrated in one trustee area to maximize your voting strength for that one board member? Or do you want to be divided? Most often divided requests come from senior communities, Sun Cities, that kind of thing, where they say our turnout is 99% in every election, so don't pack all our votes in one seat. We want to be a major vote of two. In school districts, it comes up a lot too, though, of attendance zones saying we want 2 board members, because we don't want the board to start saying I'm the board member from blank school and I'm the board member from blank school. And in extreme, a couple of years ago, if you followed what happened in San Diego, board members start bypassing the superintendent. And in San Diego, a board member was removed from the board for actually getting a principal fired of the school where her kid went. So it does get a little carried away. So that's usually, I would say, probably 2/3 of the time, attendance zones want to be unified. They want to feel together in one seat. But about 1/3 of the time, they actually ask to have, we want 2 votes. Because remember, it's not the county supervisors. Board members do not become the kings and queens of their districts like county supervisors do. It still takes 3 votes to do anything. So if only one of the board members answers, do you want election day, you have a much harder time selling the other 4. Our extreme is Central Unified out in Fresno. They actually drew every elementary school attendance zone to have 3 board members, and in some of their attendance zones, they drew all 5 board members to represent some of the voters. Crazy looking map, you might imagine. But when election time came around, that PTA at that school has 3 different debates, as 3 different, a majority of the board comes and talks to those parents at election day. So we all think compact unity, but I did want to throw that out there as an option. Again, about 2/3 of the time people want to be united, and about 1/3 of the time they ask, well, let's have 2. And so that's the goal of these hearings, and that's the goal of your outreach, especially until we get the draft maps, is to hear from the public. What is your neighborhood? How do you want it treated, and what process do we want to go through in this process? So I'm happy to answer any questions you have now.
We do have a public comment. Thank you. Laura Jamison?
Don't go away, though.
Yeah.
Oh, none?
Okay.
Okay, all right. Anyone on the board?
Yeah, I do. So, Ms. Jameson actually had a question about, 5 or 7 member districts and whether or not we can take a look at that. If we were to take a gander at what a 7-member, map would look like, would you be able to do that with, maintaining the communities of interest, or is it easier to maintain a community of interest by doing that without splitting people up? At least, not people, but at least a protected group up.
It depends on the size of the community of interest. So if you have a small neighborhood, 7s works well for them because they'll be more of a voice in that trustee area. If you have a medium or large neighborhood, well, they're not going to fit in 1/7 of the district's population, so they'll have to be divided. We certainly can look at 7 map options. I do encourage, though, then that the board planned at some point along the way to make a decision. Because
right, yeah.
what will happen is the public input will be all about 5 versus 7, and we'll never get the detailed input on the different 5 maps or the different 7 maps. The question does come up a lot, and we haven't done a full statewide survey, but virtually every school district in the state that has 7 is a legacy of unification. They were a bunch of elementary school districts that came together, and the only way they could get a deal on unification was to go to 7,
That's
so
right.
that the smaller feeder schools would have 7. I'm sure there's an exception to that somewhere, but we've never come across a school district that voluntarily had 7.
Yeah, it just, I was thinking about it. It seems to be, for our area, that if we were sticking close to natural boundaries for attendance, then a 7-member district or 7-member map might actually be easier to draw. But in that sense, like I said, I don't know what the complete demographics are of those areas and what that would look like yet. And I'm kind of a numbers geek, so that's why I wanted that map up, or that list of all the census data up, because I really enjoy looking over those numbers and crunching them in my head when we go over them. So
let me give you one other number to think about. Your board meetings will be 40% longer.
Exactly.
Because you'll have 40% more board members commenting on each agenda.
it's your
item,
commitment
too.
to
So
the board.
that's what tends to sway the public, actually. But it is certainly an option, and if that's the direction, we can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I do. I'm curious on process, because the public has the opportunity to actually email us several types of comments via email. How do you actually weigh that out? Just for a process, it's a process question, right? So you have these narratives, these letters that come in. How do you consolidate all that?
Well, the comments that come in before we have draft maps, we will certainly compile and take into consideration and try to make sure that we illustrate each of the requests in at least one of the drafts.
Yeah.
The nice thing about your process is you have so many hearings and engagement points that it's not as, oddly enough, even with 5 hearings, it's kind of rushed.
Yeah.
So the nice thing here is we'll be able to get public input, and the board of the next hearing can say, we want to see a map that does this, this, or this, based on what you hear. So it's where we want the decisions to be between the public and the elected officials. And we're happy to draw more drafts, whatever you wish to see.
So on process, we'll consolidate those and figure out what, like if there are kind of varying comments across, like say theoretically 10 submissions, then we have to, our staff are going to actually consolidate that and say, this is what this says and this is what this other letter says. That could be conflicting.
Oh, no one, we don't recommend that anyone summarize or group.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. That's my question. Are we summarizing, or are you guys summarizing?
No, I don't think anyone is summarizing. I think other than how many people said yes on map 104 and how many people said yes on 106.
Okay.
We're not going to interpret, we want to see the original language, especially Mr. Levitt from my staff, who will know what streets they're referring to and off the top of his head. And we want you to see their actual comments when you're choosing maps at the end.
Okay.
I just want to say, so you mentioned the future drawings, because what does that look like for you? Because personally, I'm against doing the maps right now. I would like to wait until 2022 to do it in one fell swoop, where they'll last off of 2020 census data, and they last for, another 10 years. But please tell me what you would do. What's your process involved in looking at so when 2022 comes around, you'll only make minor modifications. How do you take that into consideration?
To be honest, it's hopeless. Unless you're in a zero growth, like Santa Barbara, sure. You're not allowed to build anything in Santa Barbara at all. If they have 1% population growth over a decade, that's fast. We can underpopulate a trustee area that we know is growing quickly, but only by like 4%. And your growth is way past that. Right. So it's worth saying. The other piece that has likely come up, given the oddity of the time in the decade, is candidates running now may start to say, oh, this map is against me, because I won't be able to run again if I win. The nice thing about the timing now is that the map will be redrawn before they ever have to run under it. Mm-hmm. So whoever gets elected this year to the 4-year terms will be voting in 2021 on the revised map. So what you do doesn't have any impact on whether or not they can run down the line. They will get to vote on that later on. And the nice thing is in 2021, you don't have a 90-day limit. So there's no worry about that. You just get to take your time.
Yeah. Can I pause? I'm sorry. I failed to close the first public hearing. It's closed, and, okay, I'm sorry, continue on.
No problem. So the other piece I was going to mention, Pizzotti, you mentioned the website with the numbers. Mm-hmm. If you looked at our other projects, we actually put up for those that know, it's a Bing map. It essentially works like Google Maps, where you can zoom in and out on the draft maps. You can enter an address and it will zoom in. You can click to show different maps and overlay maps. And we can actually add the census block layer on there. So as people zoom in close enough that it's not a cluttered mess, the numbers will actually pop right up. So they can look at it and zoom around. And you can change the base map from a streets map to a satellite image to a map that lists businesses and schools and things like that. So we do want to enhance people's input as much as we can.
Okay, any other questions? Sarah Kirby Gonzalez?
I just have one comment as the public does that. If there's any kind of language or blurb there about, or maybe attach this PowerPoint. So, because I could see, myself sitting at home and playing with maps, and I now know a lot more than I would if I wasn't here, and thinking, this is a great idea, and then it's completely out of compliance. You're the expert in this room on it, and so that's why we've hired you. And so I just wonder how you negotiate that, because we want the public's input, we want their ideas. They might think of something that we're not thinking of, but at the same time, if they're spending a lot of time drawing something they think is just perfect, then it doesn't account for a whole lot of things that would be out of compliance. I'm just wondering how you do that, how you balance getting the input but letting the public know that there's all these restrictions with it.
There's no way to easily explain the Voting Rights Act to someone. So we encourage people to draw early, because if they submit a map, well, then we'll let them know there's a problem here. The other piece is someone like the letter you already received. People will spend hours drawing their trustee area because they know their area really well. And where they get in trouble is then they quickly throw the numbers together for the rest of the district. Right. They want to draw a whole map. Well, they've just made everyone else mad doing stuff that they really didn't care about. So encourage people, if they only care about their neighborhood, just draw their neighborhood. Just like the letter said today. We'll leave the rest for everybody else. And we will actually take those, as we draw drafts, we will try to take what Mr. Jones over here said and what Ms. X over here said and put them together as best we can. But yes, it's really there's no way to easily explain the Voting Rights Act to someone. So we just encourage them to draw early so that we can let them know and they can take a second shot if there's a problem.
Okay, any more questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now we are moving on to, let's see.
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda. Are there any comments or agenda items to discuss further before we approve?
Pull something?
Yes, 04 was already pulled to action item. Dawn? Oh, I'm sorry. Laura Jameson? I'm sorry, Laura.
The minutes?
Okay.
Hello again. Really quick, I think on the June 14th agenda, under the approval of the agenda, I think it says that Trustee Cruz approved the agenda, but I don't believe she was here by that point.
Okay.
So just
we'll make that correction to the minutes. Thank you. And then Danny?
This 015.
I'm sorry, Danny, you have up here, is that 015? It's a little hard to read.
Yes.
Okay.
I was scrambling.
Okay. Cool.
Taking it before we vote on it.
Uh-huh.
So.
I'm going to lower this just a little bit. This is regarding the geological hazard studies on the Liberty Project. Again, I'm going to ask you, like I did when it came up before, why is this item being moved forward when this project hasn't even gone to the Planning Commission yet and isn't scheduled till late summer, early fall? Are we doing this because, like what the interim financial director made the comment, that he was clearing his desk when this was last on your consent agenda? Is that why we're moving it forward? Again, I ask, how long is the testing good for? We've already spent 3 or 4 times we've spent money on this to have it tested, and $35,000 is a lot of money to spend if it's not going to last. The test isn't going to be good by the time we go to build the school. It's my understanding that the developer reached out to the superintendent to give the geological testing that they've done on that project, and that they've heard nothing back from the superintendent. Hold on, I gotta make my notes. And I just have concerns with it. I think we're throwing away money on this piece of property that we don't necessarily need to be throwing money on until we know for sure when that project's gonna move forward. Because unlike what was stated at the last time it was brought forward, we can't build that school without the developer. And we've worked with the developer for 8 or 10 years now. I know the district's worked with them because I'm very close to getting to know the developer out there, because we work with them directly because it affects our home, where we're going to live. That project's right around my home. So anyway, thank you.
Okay.
So we have to pull it. For the notes, we're conferring on pulling the notes because they were.
I'm sorry, what was the discussion?
The minutes.
There is a mistake in the minutes, so we can make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the minutes from the June 14th meeting corrected to remove Alicia Cruz after the start of the meeting.
Okay.
I'd second that motion.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Laura, for bringing that to our attention. Okay, so I asked, are there any comments? Okay, so let's, on the consent agenda, we'd need a motion
We just did that.
on all. Mine is so far done, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, all right, so here we go, to action items.
And then,
P1,
and you have conflict.
are there any other, no? Okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Approval of the Board of Trustees' recommendations made for student discipline. Case 1718-A, per Education Code 48918, Subdivision J, 1 through 3. The board orders case number 1718AB be placed at the continuation school with special education support services under a suspended expulsion for the fall semester of the 2018-19 school year. I need a motion.
So
I moved. I second.
Sorry.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously passed. Okay, action item P2. Approval of Local Control Accountability Plan 2017-2020, annual revisions. Andy Parsons, Assistant Superintendent.
You don't look like Andy.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Thought Andy was over there.
Good evening, President, Alcala Board of Trustees, and staff and guests. I'm going to let Andy off the hook here. I actually have my cabinet members here that are technically on vacation but chose to be here on their own time. What we're bringing forth tonight, following the public hearing from our last board meeting, which is required for the Local Control Accountability Plan, tonight we're bringing forward the same LCAP plan. However, we've been working very closely with Yolo County Office of Education, and per their suggestions, we would like to provide 2 revisions to the original document prior to the board's approval. What we have changed is the budget summary, which is page 5. The budget summary originally had $8.8 million as total funds budgeted for planned actions and services, and that $8.8 million was solely the supplemental concentration monies. What the county has asked us to do was to add all of the total sources of funds to this particular total funds budget for the support services, which includes Title I, Title II, Title III, and grant funding. Not all counties ask that. Sometimes they only ask for supplemental concentration. Our county would like to add the title funds, even though they aren't necessarily part of the general LCFF funding. So that's what makes the $11,110,367 change, which is already uploaded into the agenda. The other revision that we would like to make is to ensure that we have enough description, which is on page 119, which is under Goal 3, Action 1, where it talks about the 1.2% salary increase to certificated staff. And the county wanted to know, what is that? And what that is the professional learning time that is designated now, starting in the next school year, for every single Wednesday across the district. And so the county wanted a description on that, and that's found on page 118.
18?
118.
Hang on a second.
Page 118 in the second column. Professional development and professional learning will include 1.2% contracted increase for credentialed staff, through additional contracted professional learning time, including weekly early release of students. So that's new to our district. New because it was what was newly negotiated, and the county suggested that we put that into our language as well. Otherwise, they're very, very happy and have really complimented our LCAP this particularly for this year. So as a recap for our LCAP, the 5 goals that the board has consistently brought in as the priorities amongst the staff and our parent advisory committee are college and career readiness, educational opportunities to ensure equitable access for all students, and support services. The 3rd goal is high-quality teaching and learning, and we have added a tremendous amount of professional learning and professional development across the board for classified, certificated, and administration. The 4th goal is about school climate, and if there is any time in our school district today and across the nation, now is the time to really make sure that we have our components of our school climate really, really locked down. And the 5th one is about community engagement. This is work in progress, and through the board's leadership in ensuring that we stay focused, that this is what we're about, making sure that we graduate kids from high school, college, and career ready. These LCAP goals will help us to meet those goals overall. So we will bring forward the LCAP to you tonight.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, motion?
I move.
Okay,
I'll
get a
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passed. Okay, now we are,
P3.
thank you. P3, approval of the 2018-2019 Washington Unified School District budget with a positive certification. Paul Desario, there he is, Interim Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
There have been, good evening. There have been no changes since we presented to you last week, and you'll either get some changes in September or at first interim. So this reflects the budget that was proposed by the governor about a month ago.
So this
It
reflects
doesn't
May
include the
revisions.
increase.
Hold on, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
sorry.
Jackie and then Kobe. Well, I know,
Okay, go
okay.
ahead.
They're
I
all
think we're
excited.
saying the
All-
same thing.
All right, okay, Jackie and then Kobe.
That's okay. So it's based on the May revised, that had less money for us than the newly signed budget that was signed yesterday. So
That's right.
it definitely is coming back to us for the increases. I'm
Right,
assuming.
we'll come back
Okay.
at some point
Like,
for-
there's no theoretical.
Well,
You will have to come back to us. I want to be clear
We'll be
about
coming
that.
back with budget changes, so either be at first
Okay.
interim or in September, depending on what
Okay,
Chris.
with our new staff person, so.
Right,
yeah.
whatever his decision is to, when he
Okay,
wants to bring it
gotcha.
forward.
So just want to make sure that we are, it's good that we are positive with less money, but we are going to expect a budget, the board, well, I expect a board to come back.
Okay.
A new budget to come back.
Okay, Kobe?
That was exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, ditto. Sarah? Yep, we're good. So can we get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passed.
P4.
Action P4, thank you. Approval of compensation revisions to superintendent employment contract. Here we go. The Brown Act, thank you. The Brown Act in Government Code Section 54953 requires that the board orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salary schedules or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits on a local agency executive. The superintendent qualifies under the definition of agency executive. The board is taking action to approve a compensation revisions through the 2021 through 2022 school year for the employment agreement of Superintendent Linda Chin Luna. The yearly salary is as follows. 1, $216,910 for the 2018-2019 school year. 2, $225,586.40 for the 2019-2020 school year. 3, $234,609.86 for the 2020 through 2021 school year, and 4, $243,994.25 for the 21-22 school year. The employment agreement also includes an $800 per year for a master's degree stipend, an annual car allowance in the sum of $6,000, and annual benefits contribution from the district is $11,333.20 for medical insurance and premiums, and $687.92 for dental. The employment agreement includes the district payment of professional association dues with the approximate cost of $3,000 per year and a $147.60 per year towards life insurance. Okay, I need public comment from Forest Gardens.
Hi, everybody. I'm a Facebook moderator for the West Sacramento Community Board, and Ms. Luna's salary came into question during one of our nights when we were looking at a couple of things. So I'd like to read just a couple of the concerns that folks had regarding the salary. One of them was, why would she be making more than the governor? I mean, it was kind of like, look, I realize that there are market forces that are here, but the thing is that the average West Sacramento person makes $55,000 a year. And, you know, I don't know if we can just afford it, you know, and I'm sure she's well worth it. I mean, Ms. Luna, she's an awesome person. It's just that, is it feasible? Is this something that we can reach as deep in our pockets as we possibly can to pay that amount of money? On the other hand, you know, there are folks that fully support those kinds of numbers. And to Ms. Luna's defense, some folks have written, it's not about it's not about education anymore. It seems like it's all about the money, and that's wrong. Another person writes, you people never cease to amaze me. Do you know that Woodland Superintendent, Natomas Superintendent, Twin Rivers, Sac City, San Juan, Folsom, and Dixon Superintendent make more? You want good people to stay competitive in the market around you. Everybody is pissing and moaning about cops don't get paid the same as other nearby agencies, but when superintendents get a raise, that is still less than most of the neighborhood districts. You all lose your minds. If the superintendent quit for a better paying job in Natomas, then you'd all be here bashing the city again for not taking care of the most important decision in education. Everybody deserves competitive wage for their job, and I hope the police and fire get more competitive wages just like this. But let this just be a lesson to say that when it comes to the city, you've got some folks that are really pulling on this controversial issue. We want competitive people. You know, we want to offer them competitive wages, but at the same time, you know, the student population is only like 8,000 folks, 8,000 kids, if I got my numbers right. And so, she should get a raise. I mean, you know, it just seems like it'd be appropriate, but is it commensurate to the number of students that we have and, you know, the work that she's going to do? Anyway, but thank you, folks.
I believe we have another public comment.
Laura Jameson.
Laura Jameson.
Good evening. Actually, my comments were pretty much the same as Mr. Garden's. I understand the competitive business, and that's just how things are. It was just kind of a shock to see that final salary in 2022. I work for a state department that has 1,000 people, and that's significantly higher than what my director makes. So it was just, I understand, but it was just a little shocking for a community of 50,000 people. So I don't really have anything else to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You know, I would just wanted to mention, in order to maintain good people, we do have to have competitive salaries. And I know I've looked around, I think the board is very aware, we've all looked around and seen the salaries in surrounding areas. And most of the superintendents also are men in these areas. I think that this is something that has to be openly discussed, you know. We sometimes don't place the same values on the work that women do as the work that men do. And when you've had a superintendent who has brought a sense of stability to a district, this is something that's very important, and negotiations are done on everyone's salary, whether it's superintendent salaries or staff salaries or teacher salaries, and we took all this into consideration when deliberations were going on. I think it's. I think the other board members also have comments they want to make. I'm sorry.
There's another public comment
Oh,
that
I'm
came
sorry.
in late. No, that's okay. Don't
Okay.
apologize.
All right. Ran in late. Danny Langford, thank you.
I'm a mess tonight, sorry. I've been around a long time watching the district. I've seen a lot of what we thought were crazy contracts, and this one is right up there at the top. In looking at some things in the actual document, I have concern over a one-time payment of 2% of the superintendent's 2017-2018 salary to be paid on or before July 1st of 2017. That's a huge chunk of change. Is that going to be retroactive? Also, the language on the superintendent evaluation. I agree there should be an annual evaluation as all are done. But to put in language here that the board and superintendent shall meet quarterly during the course of the year to meet and give oral feedback to the superintendents concerning superintendent's progress. This is construed as be doing backroom deals to many of us in the community. I've never heard of and I know some people on different school boards, and they said this is not language that should be in there. I find it concerning the escalation of the salary over the years, and I hope that you do give her benchmarks in order to mandate and justify those increases. To give a salary around 25% raise is crazy. When we don't have money to pay our teachers more, we don't have money for our facilities that need fixing, it's just crazy. And I have had teachers reach out to me that are concerned about speaking before you because of retribution, because of what's happened in the past. They're not happy about it. They're very upset about it. This is an absolutely crazy amount of money that we're giving her on top. And like it was said before me, we're comparing it to Elk Grove, Sac City, or even Natomas. Natomas has 14,000 students. We have 7 or 8. There's a huge difference there. Did the superintendent write this evaluation, or I'm sorry, this contract for herself? Because wow, she really did a great job. Thanks.
Okay, we have board comments.
Yeah.
Any?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Pizzati.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did notice when we looked at this, we looked at the neighboring regions and what the neighboring districts, and we looked at what all the other the superintendents were making, and they were of comparable size. And when we also looked at it, we looked at who they are. They were all white males making substantially more. That's completely unfair to say that just because there's a gender issue here, that somebody's doing twice the work or as much work, just because they're a woman or a woman of color, shouldn't be paid an equal amount. And I honestly think Linda is worth her weight in gold in terms of the amount of work that she does for this district. And I have absolutely zero problems with bringing her up equal to what the others in the surrounding areas are doing, because this is more of a not just a issue of equality. It's also a retainment issue. There is somebody here that is a stabilizing force in our district, and that's something that we need. She's put processes in place, systems in place that eventually someday can be carried on, throughout time. She's fixing problems that we have had and has gone through and done much digging to uncover the issues of previous superintendents that have been not well taken care of. So we need to actually keep this wonderful superintendent in place. and this helps do that for the foreseeable future. So I fully support this.
Okay, Trustee Wong?
So just for transparency, and I don't know if everybody has the data, but it's public. So Davis Joint Unified, white male, $228,093, and enrollment is 8,600. Natomas Unified School District, white male, $293,604. And this doesn't include the bonuses that they got, the signing bonuses that they got that were highlighted in the SACB article recently. 14,600 students. Woodland Joint Unified, white male, 224,180, 10,000 students. For people who are asking. Esparto Unified School District, Hispanic male, 184,371 for 967 students. So, and we, prior to this, were paying Superintendent Luna $199,950 for 8,000 students. So you're wondering, comparing what the enrollment is, what other people are paying. Just wanted to be transparent about that. The average state superintendent salary is $226,000 statewide, but regionally, I mean, to the point, like if you want the data, these are the data, just to be transparent about what we're seeing, right? So the average around these surrounding districts is $233,947. As a person of color, as a woman of color, I'm actually have been kind of sitting on this and trying to figure out like what I'm feeling about the comments. And I've actually been quite disappointed in our community of how we actually paint her as an untrustworthy, incompetent superintendent. Right, the comments that have come back, the comments that I've seen are really deeply offensive. And I was trying to figure out why that is. Right, and I'm going to just say it because it feels like there's a targeting of the stereotype of a Fu Manchu, like untrustworthy Asian American woman. I'm not saying that it's valid, that's what it feels like. Like there's an implicit bias about how the comments are coming up, at least on the Facebook pages, right? Like it's sort of like it's coming up. I work with superintendents across the state, all across the state. And I will guarantee you that in terms of her skill set, we have been underpaying her, of how I've worked with, and quite frankly, I've worked with your recent past superintendent when he moved to Laco. So I have an idea of how this is playing out. I have an idea of what she brings to the board and the commitment that she has on equity. And I think we can't sit here and ask her to champion equity issues with children of color, English language learners, special education, and not live that ourselves, right? Because it is abhorrent to actually look at this. And as an equity advocate, you guys actually voted for me as a children's advocate on equity issues and I worked at the National Center for Youth Law, and we're deep in the immigration issues and the equity issues around there. So you know what, and I can't sit here any longer and not express to you how it feels. How it feels. The optics are really bad. Whether or not that's intentional or not, bias, and I think I have brought this up for the years, the implicit bias is deep. And we got to unpack it, right? And I'm looking at people in the audience that know that I've actually raised this. And I've been watching for the last 18 months and trying to figure out how do we approach this conversation, because it's really deep in this community. And it's, these comments hit for a different way for me. People ask what she's done. As a children's advocate, she's uncovered special education issues that have, can I say this? I don't even know no, okay, I'm getting a no. She has put our students front and center, right? The things that I, as a children's advocate, have gone, what the heck has happened in this district over the previous to her was really shocking. As someone who's actually looked at these inequities across the state for some time. And I've actually seen a lot of positive changes and taking it, head on. The investment that we've made for English language learners, special education, engagement in students, the relationship with the city, the relationship with the county, she's improved all of that, right? Whether or not like that, it's not about politics. It's about actually bringing in resources and for our students and community so that we can operate better. That's the job of a superintendent, right? The salary of the governor is actually statutorily mandated, right? There are a lot of, and does she run a corporation? Yes, she does. Look at the size of our budget, right? The size of our budget is huge, and she actually is the head of our school district. And we are underpaying her. Again, I can rattle off the numbers again if that's helpful to people. She is making at the end of it, is right now is currently making $30,000 less, right? We have asked her to actually, in a Title I district, and I don't know if people out there understand what a Title I district is, we are actually under-resourced, impoverished, to turn around a school district and make it like Davis, right? We want these high standards. That's a hard job. Davis is a lot more resourced, right? And he's making $30,000 more than she is in a well-resourced school district with about 8,000 kids, right? So we're asking her to do, I'm not going to say that's impossible because we believe in her. This is actually a testament and investment of saying, we believe that you can actually do this for our kids in this district that is a Title I underserved, that has a significant number of underserved students. And we don't really talk about that enough, right? About the job, the task that it takes to actually turn a school district around to become high performing. I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
Okay, Sarah Kirby-Gonzalez.
I want to thank my board colleagues for their comments and stepping out of their comfort zone to share some really important information. So thank you for that, and thank you for your comments. I'll share what I did last time coming from a different perspective, and that is that I misspoke last time. I said that since 2000, including an interim superintendent, we had had 6 superintendents, but that's wrong. Since 2000, there have been 7 superintendents, including an interim. And turnover is not good for students. It's not good for students. And this community has seen turnover, a lot of it, and it's not good for kids. And if we do not show Superintendent Linda Luna that we are happy that she is here, somebody else will. And this is the person that I want here. We need to have a competitive salary everywhere. Know that we stay up very late at night looking over the numbers, crunching the numbers. Looking at the discrepancy was very important to me of other districts too. What is the discrepancy between what a superintendent makes and what their teachers make and what their classified makes and what their assistant superintendents make? And I'll tell you, I got on the phone with a couple of board members in other places and said, what are you doing paying your superintendent this money when you're paying your teachers below? And so we want to be competitive in every single area. Every area for every single one of our employees. Pay is not enough to make people want to come to work every day and feel good about coming to work every day. It's not enough for our teachers. It's not enough for our classified. It's not enough for anybody in this room. We need to have a positive culture too. And we hold everyone in this district to a high standard. We hold our superintendent to a high standard. And when there is work to be done, which there is, we have discussions about that. And yes, we do meet quarterly. We talk about it. And as an educator who worked with Accomplished California Teachers Network to do some reform on what teacher evaluation should look like, what should a good evaluation look like? You know what it shouldn't look like? It shouldn't look like a conversation at the end of the year with a paper that says, good job, or we're not happy. That's what it shouldn't look like. And districts doing that, I don't want to be held to that standard. So we want to have a good evaluation just like we want of our teachers and our classified staff. And if anybody in this district feels like they're not getting a good evaluation, then let us know. But it should be on a regular basis. It should be a regular conversation. And you look at your metrics and you talk about your metrics and maybe you adjust them. Maybe something came up over here and you had to move a little bit from those first goals. And we have to discuss that. We don't wait until the end of the year to talk about it. We don't wait till the end of the year to say, oh, we didn't get there. We have these conversations all along. So that's why we have regular meetings, and we do talk about the evaluation. So because that's come up multiple times, I want to share that because it's very important to me to have those conversations on a regular basis. And I absolutely support doing that. And there is a lot of confusion with, is this the city? Is this the school board? I see that conversation, people a little bit confused over who's paying who and doing what. And this is the school board, and the city manager makes more. And so that's a different entity than what we are here and what we're talking about. And so those are really the pieces that I wanted to talk about. My colleagues went through and really shared and hit on a lot of these pieces. But since I was here, as was our President Alcala, about doing our superintendent search, we reached out to the community, we hired a search firm, and we poured over that data. Everyone in the community gave feedback. They gave it through email, they gave it through forums, they gave it through one-on-one conversations. We had them through the chamber, we had them with parents, we had them with taxpayers and people who are retired. We had everyone in the community giving us feedback on what do you want in a superintendent. And we don't just throw that away, we look at that and we honor that. And that's exactly what's been happening here. We hired somebody that met the criteria of what the community wanted. So there's some voices that we're hearing and making comments, but I also want to share some voices that we're not hearing. And of course it's important for the community. Of course we appreciate you. Of course you need to ask questions. Of course we need to have this dialogue. I want to share some conversations that we're not all hearing. And that is, we spend a lot of time at the schools. We spend a lot of time with PTO folks. We spend a lot of time with kids all over this district. We don't sit in our homes by ourselves and lock our door and ignore the community. We are the community. And so that's why I said, call us, talk to us, we're here. And there are so many people in this district that have come back to our district, that have come back to our schools, that have seen the supports being put in place, that have seen the professional development working, that have seen the communication. We had no social media or any communication happening before Superintendent Luna. And people are coming back and they're saying thank you and they're appreciating it because now they have a voice and an outlet and where to be. And so I have a long list. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm happy to sit down one-on-one and talk about some of the metrics and places that I'm really proud that the district has come. So I am very, very appreciative of this district, of our teachers, of our classified staff, of our district office staff, of our administrators, of our cabinet, and of our superintendent. And everyone in this district should feel valued. And thank you.
Okay. So I need a motion.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passed. P5, approval of waiver for River City High School physical education requirement for a 4x4 block schedule. Andy Parsons. Andy?
Good evening. Tonight, at the last board meeting, the board facilitated a public hearing on the waiver for block scheduling up at the high school. And the issue was that, according to Ed Code, students need to be in PE 400 minutes every 10 days, but in a 4x4 schedule, they only take it half the year. Therefore, we need a waiver that should have been done back when we transferred to a 4x4. But we do need the waiver approved by the board so we can take it to the state board for their consideration.
Okay, any questions? Comments? No? Okay.
I move.
Second? Yeah. Who's going to give me a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passed. Okay, P6, approval of instructional materials for the 1 through 5 grades physical education program. Andy, again.
As the board knows, we had a recent FPM study done, and one of the things that did come up had to do with our PE curriculum in grades 1 through 5. And so we piloted, some of our teachers piloted a certain curriculum, and they would like the board to adopt this for 1 through 5 teachers.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments?
Just a quick question. Does this come, it says lottery funds, is it wholly out of lottery funds or half out of?
No, it is out of instructional materials, which is lottery funds.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Anyone else? Okay, you need a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. P7, instructional materials for advanced placement physics. Andy Parsons.
At the last board meeting, the board facilitated a public hearing on advanced placement physics instructional material. This was passed by Curriculum Council the class itself in the fall. However, we now have enough enrollment at the high school to offer AP Physics, but we didn't have a curriculum council meeting to actually approve this instructional material. I sent out electronically to see if there was any feedback. With no feedback, you did a public hearing at the last board meeting, so I'm asking the board to approve.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, need a motion?
I move.
A second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are, thank you, Andy. Now we are at P8, approval of amendment number 2 to the existing facilities use memorandum of understanding with the City of West Sacramento. And we have some comments. No? Public comments. Laura Jameson? Oh, Laura, thank you. And Danny Langford. Okay.
I wasn't planning a presentation tonight, but I was, good evening again. I wasn't planning a presentation tonight. I was just saying, I would just restate what I presented to you at the last meeting, along with the staff in the city who are here, in case you have any questions. Basically, this memorandum puts in place the landing for the overpass north of the parking lot at Westmore Oaks. And maybe a comment, we did have our security consultant review it, gave us some recommendation. I believe you got copies of that, and those will be included in the plan. In fact, they actually were already included, but we made sure that he wrote it such that the city would, as they build it, will include those recommendations. So with that, we're recommending approval of it. The final meets and bounds will be done later. This is just to allow the city to finish their planning and know that they're going to have a place to land.
Any questions, comments? Okay, we do have public comment.
No, public comment.
Okay, now we have public comment. Apologies.
Laura,
Laura, are you going to want to? No? Okay, so Danny Langford.
A lot of concerns, as I've expressed over and over, being that the rendering attached to here doesn't show the trail at the back of the school, like the rough drafts that have been handed out at 2x2s and other meetings, is concerning. The language that the city, provide the city with permanent right to structure and maintain the Sycamore Trail. Permanent rights, that's very concerning, very concerning. Where's the safety report? Because I haven't seen it anywhere, and if it's attached, it should be attached if it's part of the report. Going to a vote without that safety report is even more concerning. Is the city not paying anything to use the property? Liability to the school district, what's that? Has the attorney reviewed this? Because it looks like it's written by the city, because the city's the only one that appears to be benefiting from this. There's not going to be a park structure included, just a public trail. I would certainly hope that you'd be more concerned about safety on this campus versus how big the baseball diamonds are going to be, Mr. Bizzotti. That was a little concerning. Ms. Kirby Gonzalez, I know you talk about your beautiful daughters all the time. I know you supported the nest. Would you be comfortable with your daughters going to the school that has this trail up against it, or even the nest? Especially with school shootings on the rise in our nation. It's a terrifying world we live in. We have to be protecting our kids. The devil is in the detail of this MOU. It's very concerning. Very concerning. Please change the language. We have somebody that's worked on this, and I understand the interim financial director has probably worked very hard on this, but he's not in this community. He doesn't live here, and he's an interim. He's leaving. The fact that we would give the city full control of a property, any of our properties, is very concerning. And I don't even know how it's legal, because the state technically owns our schools. We just run them. So those are some of my comments.
Thank you. Okay, I would need a motion to pass this.
Oh, there's comments.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I got
Board
comments too.
comments. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. It was
Sarah, go ahead.
Sarah? Okay.
Thank you. I have a few questions. One would be, can we have clarification about, from our end of the school district, about the emergency preparedness group? I understand that they looked at the school site, and I'm just wondering if you could just share that a little bit further with us.
Right. They prepared, I'm sorry, I don't have the letter that was sent to you right in front of me. I could go get it. But I think quickly, we asked them to look at the entrance to the school and the gating, which is probably the most important parts of it, and the lighting. And so they made comments on both those, said that the city's plan, or basically said they wanted lighting and they wanted the fencing and the gating. So if you recall from the presentation, that you cannot get from the landing to the school without going through a gate, which we would keep locked during school. It would open for children to come to school and that be locked. And then the entire structure is lighted for evening use. So I think those are probably the key points that they looked at.
So they had.
They actually met with us and took a look at it. And,
Perfect.
And then we had our Jerry was there and helped go through it with him.
Great.
I actually have the information.
Yeah.
Oh, you have it? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I could have gotten
That's
it.
okay. And so, Board of Trustees, at the last presentation, which was at the last board meeting, the city made the presentation in regards to the input that was given for building the bicycle trail, and with the input from the principal, and also from the Emergency Preparedness Group, which is our safety consultant. They had made 3 suggestions, and we heard them at the city's presentation at the last meeting. The first one is about the adjacent, having adequate fencing on the south side of the walkway to ensure that the traffic and entering, or the ease of the access of the school parking lot, and they addressed that in their last presentation. The second one would be about adequate lighting. I spoke to a lieutenant in the police department today specifically about the safety and the lighting, and the police, their perspective is that because it's so open and the lighting will be there, it actually exposes more of any kind of activity that would take place at that bicycle trail coming down, and would be a deterrent because it's so exposed with the lighting. Lastly, the third recommendation was about the locking of the gates, and we kind of grilled the city on that at the last meeting in regards to locking the gates once school starts, and that one of our employees would be ensuring that unlocking the gates for students to leave school upon dismissal. So that was actually already put into the plan because we were proactive about getting concerns into the hands of the city prior to any kind of drafting, so.
Thank you. So, if I may.
Oh, yes.
So just to follow up, not only did I mention baseball fields, one of the things I did mention was about the gates and making sure that there was a clear path that was fenced and that had a locking mechanism that our district staff would be able to lock in order to prevent people having access to our schools. So that is something that I feel very strongly about, is making sure that we had a secure school site, especially while school was in session. So I just wanted to make that very clear for the record, that it is important that we do maintain safety and security, as well as have an access point for our kids to get to school that is safer. It's a safer way of them getting to school. So I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. This is about safety and security. And so our kids don't have to ride their bikes home in the dark through a unlit area and a longer path than going across an overpass. So with that, I would, somebody else got something to say?
Board Member Wong, did you have anything? Okay, I did want a little clarification. I heard the comments, the public comments that were made, and I just wanted some clarification for myself about the city having control.
Okay, so the gates are controlled by the school, not the city. We're controlling, the school district will be controlling the gates, or the principal of the school will control the gates and access to the school from that overcrossing. So if the bicycles go over that and those gates lock, they have to go out to the street in front of us.
I'm sorry.
Speak in the microphone.
Could you speak into the
Oh,
microphone?
I'm sorry, you can't
Thank
hear me. My apologies. So the gate will be controlled by the principal, and they will lock that gate after children, after school starts, so no one can enter the school site through that gate. Is that clear?
Okay.
And so then, if the bicyclist does go across or pedestrian, they have to go out to the city street that's adjacent to the school.
I had some concerns. I've been getting a bunch of texts, and I've actually had a few phone calls regarding, concerns that residents in the city had. And I'm just wondering, I mean, they don't like the idea of, having the gates closed at dusk and all. I mean, is this the process that's going to be used?
Well, the gates do not limit access to the public to going onto the street. The gates only limit access to the school.
Okay.
So so if you think about it like a T-shaped, as you came over the top of that, I wish I had the drawing, but you come over the top of the overcrossing, you can go into this, you have to turn to the, if I'm facing south, you'd have to turn to the left and go into the street that's in front of the school to ride your bike. You're not allowed to go onto the school campus, the way this is set up.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the biggest concern that I have is I keep getting these texts from the community, saying that they really had and I know the city told us that they had reached out to the community, but that there wasn't any input from the community members. Paul, were you present at any of the meetings that were there?
I was not present. I don't know, we could, maybe Edgar could answer that question. He's here.
Good evening, President Alcala, Board of Trustees. Yeah, the city did have a community, they did go through the community process. What they did is they had a community workshop on January 18th where they invited sent mailers out to over 1,700 people, residents, as well as 600 email notifications to those that we've had email addresses for. In that meeting, we had 54 residents that actually showed up. On top of that, we did what was an online engagement that ran for 2 weeks, where we had over 340 submittals to the city in terms of this project. Overwhelmingly, the project was supported, but security is one of the concerns that they had, which is why as we started the project, we incorporated our team, which utilizes our police department as what we can do: lighting, railing, fence heights. Different types of treatments in terms of what's called like CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, how you're going to landscape and how you're going to grade certain components to prevent that component or that element to be developing. So those are the things that we're incorporating into our design, as well as the concerns that the Westmore Oaks principal raised during our meetings about line of sight, security, what Mr. Desario was saying in terms of the gate, just so maybe I could elaborate on that, is as you're coming down the overcrossing, there's a landing at the bottom, and it's kind of towards the west end of the parking lot. At that point, there's going to be a gate that during school hours would be open for kids to go on to school. Right after school bell rings, that will be shut. And then the pedestrians that are not school kids or are going to the school, they're required to go down Clarendon, and then they'll go down Clarendon and go on their way to the south, and then continue on the trail to the south, which is along Deerwood. But in general, there's going to be a controlled gate at the bottom of the landing by the school staff during school hours.
Okay, I just had one more question for you, and then one for you, Paul. It's real quick. They're real quick. Just so that everyone understands about this public meeting, how many people would you say came?
Oh, I know exactly how many. There was 54 that came.
Okay. All right. It's a good number. And then, Paul, my question for you is, our agency that we hired, the security agency from LA, have they provided input? Did they look at this?
Yeah.
What was their opinion?
Yeah, we got the letter.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was speaking. I believe we sent a letter and we can have the letter
And
available.
that was the one from okay,
Yeah,
thank
it's the
you,
one
Lynn,
that
I'm
she
sorry.
read.
I wasn't sure who
No.
had written that one.
I have a question, and maybe it's just a very basic question and everybody else understands it. What does it mean to have a permanent right to construct and maintain sycamore trails? Like, what is, I mean, like forever, like permanent right? That's a little bit, like, for me, scary, like.
No, Trustee Wong, there is definitely, the term is permanent, of course, but, you know, at the end of the project is, we have a structure. We have a ramp that is in a facility that the city is going to own and maintain. So
Right.
as part of that, we need some sort of right to be on it. The MOU in of itself just agrees to that the board is going to provide us, is going to include the Westmore Oaks facility as a location for us to have a facility, our facility on it. But underneath the actual structure, we need some sort of property right. So that's what that means.
Property right to.
The city.
But I guess she's asking what,
I'm
what?
just, distill it to me. What does that mean? Like, it
Oh,
means.
You mean the trail, right?
Right, the trail,
It means
what do you
the
mean?
ramp. It means the property
ramp,
underneath the ramp. So, for
Okay.
example, a good example would be an easement. That would be,
Okay.
that would be a right, the city would want to acquire.
So should, in the long term, they decide they don't want that anymore and they tear it down, then the property would revert back to the school district.
Okay, so it's the physical, the ramp.
Right, so basically, it's just a place for them to land, and we want them to maintain the whole structure, so we have to grant them, so essentially an easement to have their structure there.
Right.
And what does work cooperatively look like between the city and the school district, out of curiosity?
Right here. You mean working cooperatively? That means that we're working
Because it
together
says
try
to work cooperatively to prepare such other documents as
Oh,
may be
there's gonna
necessary.
be- And I think, maybe in my earlier presentation here, there will be a actual specific piece, a description of the property that we use.
And does that come to the board?
Yes. Yeah, that would be like a meets and bounds. I don't know if you know the word.
Before anything would get constructed, this cooperative agreement would come to us?
Yeah, Trustee Wong, absolutely. This would be something that would be coordinated through staff and the legal counsel to make sure that everyone's rights are protected. You, as the district or the state, as a property owner, and the city as a owner of the facility that we're going to maintain. So it'll get reviewed and through staff and legal counsel before it comes to the board and through the city council.
Okay, so just follow up, I have a question also. Being that you would have this ownership or this easement, at any time, you know, should you elect to do anything with it, that would have to be agreed upon by the board, is that correct?
Correct.
If any changes would be.
Any changes
will
whatsoever?
come back to the board.
The agreement doesn't say that. That's why we're asking these questions. Like, cooperatively is a very vague.
Yeah, so when
And
we come
permanent
back
rights,
with
I
the
think,
final-
is
the final
very
agreement-
alarming.
Right, when we come back with the final agreement, I think it will clarify it.
We would like, I would request that be clarified, I mean, as the final agreement, right? Like
I
that.
think
I mean,
so,
I don't know how others feel about it. It's such a
Yeah.
broad term.
We can do that.
Trustee Wong, yes, yeah, there would be something negotiated with the two agencies and be brought forward. This wouldn't come as something that isn't vetted just through the city staff and through the district members. It would have to involve quite a bit of players.
No, but Paul, you're agreeing to amend this agreement to kind of clearly define what
Well, I would
cooperative
think
work
when we
together
bring the-
means?
When we bring
I
the
just-
final agreement,
Okay, so
gonna
we're
be
not
a-
voting on this?
no, tonight we're voting on this so they can go ahead with their planning and construction. They know that you're behind them getting a piece of land. Otherwise, they wouldn't do the project. And so, but then, when they actually draw the actual landing, and it's drawn to scale and all prepared for construction, they would come back with an agreement on the exact piece of property. Does that make sense?
So what is this? It's sort of like a pre-agreement?
This is kind of a pre-agreement.
President Alcala, this, yes, I guess for lack of a better word, you could see this as a pre-agreement, just to bring in Westmore Oaks as a facility under the joint use agreement that the city has with the district.
When you said Westmore Oaks, just
I'm
that.
sorry, Washington District.
Okay, right. And you meant just that one small easement?
little sliver.
Yeah, that
Well,
little sliver.
yeah,
Okay.
correct.
You know, I remember we've done easements before, and they've usually, rather than this what is that called, perpetuity? Right, they've had like.
Permanently. There's a permanent
Right.
right to those.
Exactly. And I know we've had like 30-year agreements.
Now, Now, one thing I just want to qualify this MOU is not giving the city any type of rights to the property. It's just simply that we're bringing in the West Moore Oaks site into the joint use agreement. There's not a transfer of ownership or anything right at this point.
But there'll be a permanent right to construct.
Once we come back with a separate agreement.
There's still more steps in the process.
Yes.
No, I hear that. They're just not in this agreement that we're voting on tonight. I'm sorry, and I wasn't here. It was hard to follow, actually, again, from far away. So I apologize if you all covered this last time. I just need to get clarification about what this all means. And can I ask another question that may, and I don't recall if this was asked, is there a timing issue that we need to do this tonight, right now? Out of curiosity.
Well, probably not. I can't imagine that waiting another month or so would make that much difference.
Okay.
It's just that we wanted to, the city asked that they could, because they're in design and planning, they want to be certain that they can move ahead.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for doing it now.
Okay. So this is just like you're saying that it's brought tonight just to share our good faith that we want to work. Oh, I see. So, but there's no urgency to it tonight.
No, not today. There wouldn't be anything that would be jeopardize something else if we.
The staff could still continue to work with the city, which we support, but that this MOU doesn't require that this doesn't have to happen for that continued collaboration.
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right. So it could be next month that we voted on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's open discussion. I again, like I wasn't here, so I apologize.
This is part of the process. I mean, this is the first step in the process. This is something that we should take and address right now. As we move forward in the process, it gets more clear and more identified, and that's when things start to develop more clearly, and we'll see more descriptive language. But they can't really go too much further into detail without this first step. So, I don't see any reason for holding it up.
So I'd just like to ask our legal counsel to clarify some of the ambiguities that we're hearing or maybe not understanding correctly.
It's on.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry, Marie, can't hear you.
Okay, let me start over again. One of my colleagues, Sam Santana, I believe, has been working with your district on these issues. So I'm not as familiar with them as he is, as he helps with not all, but some of your facilities work.
Okay.
I have no reason to believe that what they're saying is incorrect this evening, but I don't know enough about it to give you any clear direction.
So I don't know about others, but I'd feel a little bit more comfort if we spoke to our legal counsel about what this contract means. I mean, I again support the relationship and collaboration. I just need to understand what the contract language means and the impact on the district. Like if Sam's been working on it, if that's, I mean, I don't know about others, but that's where I sit.
We can spend more time. I think the point here, this is part of the MOU, not a contract. So this is something different.
Absolutely, I understand. I think that just. I pointed out the things in the language that I'm like, oh, okay, like I need more clarity about like what those terms mean, and the impact. So, and again, I want to be clear that it's not like I don't want. As I said, I am happy that we are working more collaboratively with the city. I just need some clarity about this agreement.
Okay.
Can I finish my comments?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Even if that is the direction, I want to have them for the record. And so I did look over the 54 people that came. You did a nice job memorializing those comments, and so you can see them all. They're all online. And so I read through everyone's comments from that meeting. I also read through all of the email comments too. We did have some teachers that work at our schools that commented on that as well. And so I read through all of those. I went and I actually talked to some people on the street as I drove by and said, hey, and chased them down. And they told me that they did get the postcard or the door hanger, whatever it looked like, in terms of at their home to give back feedback. One person said that he wrote it down and mailed it in, and so that was memorialized on there. And there was some comments about concerns for safety in terms of the community, and that's of course a city project and a city piece. So just as feedback that I think more outreach, is always good for the community. But it was great to see all that comment. It was great to see all that feedback. From my standpoint, what I was looking at was what does our emergency preparedness group think? What do the police think? And then we did hear from our principal. And so we heard that this helps kids get to school safer. We heard that from our principal. We heard from our emergency preparedness group that there was some input on gates and lighting and that has been met. And then also the police department that you have been working with. And so that's what I needed to make myself feel good moving forward from last time's meeting. And so if you would like, to have our legal team to hear from them directly, that's supportive, but I am supportive of the process after those pieces have been done. And to clarify, just to make sure that everyone understands this piece right here, I'm thinking a lot about Bright Park. So we have an MOU with Bright Park, but when big things happen, they do come to us with changes and we have to approve them. Mm-hmm. And there are conversations that happen there. And this does not talk about behind the school or putting a trail behind the school with this document right here. So I want to clarify that and ask, is that correct? That this does not right now say that there's a trail behind the school?
No, that was a discussion that we had with the city, and we took all that language, all that out of it. So the only thing this pertains to is the landing, period.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. And so I just want people to know that conversation is still to come to make sure that we have a safe place. Also, when after talking with some of our police officers, this is a school district comment right now, not a city comment, but right. Some of the police officers said to me, no, you can't get behind that school. And I did. I drove over and yanked on the gates, and luckily nobody called the police on me as I was there. But it looks like there's a key, and it's a horrible fence that we have as a school district there right now. So what has to happen with that fence in the interim until we decide how behind the school looks, until how Westmore Oaks looks, which I'm very supportive of working together to make that space back there usable for our community, it has to have a gate that the police can get through. And so we need to talk to them, is that a passcode that dispatch has? Maybe dispatch knows the code, so if somebody calls, whoever's on call can get back there, whatever it is, because right now, as a school district, I worry that our police can't get back there, and they're worried because they've told me. So that's our school district feedback for us. But I am supportive of this after the pieces that I needed to be okay with were in terms of the school district components. Again, this is a city project looking at this from the school district lens.
Okay, Mr. Rosati has a question.
Thank you. Actually, I just wanted to make a comment, and I'm basically piggybacking on what Trustee Kirby-Gonzalez said, in the sense that what are the things that really stood out to me for what I heard at the previous conversation was that our principals were strongly behind this. They were very concerned with how their kiddos get to school. And especially, when we're in fall and the days get shorter, and are they walking to school in the dark or walking home from school in the dark? It's a very scary issue for a child to be facing when they have to walk all the way around out to Jefferson and then back through in order to get to their home. And so I guess to me, safety for our kids is the number one priority. And since the analysis from our safety consultant has come back and said that this meets muster, then to me, I'm ready to move forward with this tonight. And continuing the conversations that need to happen as we go forward, because there's always time when the second part of this comes to us to revise. So I just don't see any reason to halt progress for the time being. But I can understand where other people might feel uncomfortable. I just say my personal thoughts is this is only part of the process. We in the past have done this before in terms of moving forward with a portion of the process in order to see the final result and having more input on that final result. and having them take that back with our concerns and make amendments to it. So that's just my 2 cents, and I would make a motion to move this forward.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, so for lack of a second,
I'm fully comfortable if anybody wants to wait and table it. I'll make a second, but if the vote is not there, that is your purview.
So,
Well,
So
no pressure. Yeah, no, I guess, yeah, on process, I would appreciate tabling it for legal consultation. I also want to be clear that progress, you guys have been working together, so it's not, again, we sanction, direction says continue to talk. It's just talking to legal counsel about what the impact is long-term.
okay, and I too agree with that, so we'll just.
Call a vote.
Call a vote, yeah. Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Again,
Was there a second on the tabling, though?
No.
No, she
Okay,
didn't
hold
say
on.
table it.
Right, to table it.
There's a motion on the floor.
Oh, there's a motion to table, so all in favor?
Are you making a motion to table?
This is what the
Yeah,
motion was, to
motion,
table?
but his
No,
motion
my
came
motion
first.
was standing.
Okay, I'm sorry, let's clarify then. Standing motion, second, let's take a vote. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Aye.
No, you would say no.
I would say no. I'm sorry. I want to table this.
I want to table
Okay,
this.
so we will vote no on this.
Yeah.
All against? No.
I
Jackie,
abstain.
no?
I'm abstaining, but I just want to make the
Okay,
motion
well,
to table.
All
So
right.
I don't
for
want
what-
to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's do this. Okay, so it can't pass, so let's now
not gonna
make
pass,
your
right.
motion.
Motion to table.
Okay, and I second that.
Wait, does it pass with 2 to 1, or does it need 3?
No, you can't.
The board needs a majority of the seats, not the majority of the board members. So for anything to pass this evening, you need at least 3 votes.
Exactly, right. So,
Right.
right, exactly.
Right.
So it's just tabled,
Right,
that's
just
it.
tabled.
Okay, so I seconded the tabling. All in favor?
It
Okay.
doesn't
Aye.
matter, yeah, aye. It's going to be tabled, yeah.
Yeah, you don't
Right,
need
it's
to.
got, and noes?
Okay.
Noes? Okay, so it's
Okay,
tabled, thank you.
President Alcala, if we could just clarify the direction for the staff.
All right.
We just want to make sure that we prepare for the next board meeting, that the board is requesting to ensure that our legal counsel has provided you the information that you need in regarding your concerns this evening.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't have our concerns, they're just clarification of the contract. I don't want to alarm anybody.
Okay.
It's just a clarification of what does, like, permanent right to construct mean.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
All right.
That's just,
Okay, that's,
my non-attorney, non-contract, didn't go to law school, year 1, contracts is in year 2. Yeah, so, year 1, I hear, that's right, year 1. So I'm not familiar with contract language, and it would just be helpful to understand what that impact is.
okay, that's, okay. Are we good? All right. So now we're going to move on to 04. Let's see, that is, I'm sorry, let's move this here. 04 is pulled into an action item, and that,
Approval of a board certified
thank
behavior
you.
analyst.
Thank you. Approval of board certified behavioral analyst job description, human resources. So we have a public comment? Public comment?
Just want to describe what it is.
Human resources, can we have someone
Describe what it is.
describe what it is, and then there's a public comment on it?
So this is the creation of a board-certified behavior analyst job description for the district. This part of the planning that has gone on in the special services department has been to assess if we have the current positions to meet the needs of the students in the district. And so this is a recommended position that they would like to bring into the department. It is brought in as a classified manager level position, and that is a standard that is looked at in when we did some assessment of other districts and how they've brought this position into the district, into their own districts. That is how they have done that. because there are a number of administrative tasks involved. There's specific credentialing that is required. There is the need for this person to be able to direct staff as to the needs of students, and so that is the reasoning behind it being a management level position. So that you'll see the next item that you already approved was a change to the job description, or to the salary schedule, excuse me.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Thank you for being here on your vacation day.
Okay, and we do have a public comment. Don Stauffer. Somewhere in here.
Hello. I'm actually happy that this position is being brought forward. I think it's a good idea for the district. Though I do notice that in the description of the position, it talks only about special ed and special ed students, whereas in the essential duties and responsibilities seems to open it up to the broader population of students. And I just wanted clarification, because there would seem to be a need not just for this type of position for special ed kids, but also kids in the general population. And I was wanting to know, would this person be would this person make recommendations to place a regular ed student into special ed? Would this person in this position make recommendations for behavior plans on students who are regular ed students as well as special ed students? So that was the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Andy's
we
coming
were
up.
going to ask.
Andy's coming up.
Thank you, Andy.
Sure. This position is specifically for special services. The reason for that is we need a specialist to do behavioral plans for students with disabilities. For general ed students, that is going to be done through our MTSS framework, through restorative practices and things of that nature. This person does not recommend that a student receive an IEP. That is a different process completely with our director. So this position itself is with special services.
Okay. Thank you, Andy, for clarifying that. Okay, so now we need a motion.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, second. I'm sorry, was there another question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear any. Trustee Kirby-Gonzalez has a question. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just want clarification. So I understand what you're saying. I'm assuming this is also a compliance piece, possibly needing to serve students of special needs. I know that in some of the most successful things I've seen, like in day-to-day work, maybe a teacher or director who maybe helps oversee students who are identified emotionally disturbed or who are maybe on the autism spectrum, maybe not formally, but will have collaboration and have those conversations, be in meetings together. I'm wondering if there will be times for that collaboration to provide shared input of practices, if that would ever come about without maybe being an official time or title, like during district collaboration or things like that.
Absolutely, and I'm going to try to address that because I'm a little confused on what exactly you're asking. However, currently we have 3 program specialists in special services that have been doing behavioral plans without being certified to do them and without the experience. And so they collaborate so much. Sue Massey Clover has done a great job in the collaboration of that, but we do need someone to support our other program specialists with the behavioral plans, which is why this person, as Mr. Reed said, will be supervising and directing other employees.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, I believe Trustee Pizzotti made a motion. I need a second.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Okay, all right, so now we are, I'm sorry, I just lost my agenda. What did I do with that? Here we go. So now we are at Board Governance, Q1, second read and approval of Administrative Regulation 5121, grades and evaluation. Andy Parsons.
At the June 14th board meeting, we did the first read for Administrative Regulation 5121. And so attached is the after board feedback and community feedback. And just to remind the board, the process, Educational Services convened a special task force that was made up of 3 administrators, 5 high school teachers, 5 middle school teachers, 6 elementary school teachers, and WSTA President, Mr. Stauffer. And so they brainstormed, did a lot of work on this, and so this was a very collaborative effort to create the Administrative Regulation 5121, and tonight we ask the approval.
I missed the vote.
But it's okay, passed. Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments?
I'll just make the same comment that I did before. This all looks good, and I trust the staff input, and so I will trust them in that. And just a recommendation is, as this rolls out, because I've lived the world of standard exceeded, and I've lived those conversations with parents and them not understanding it and thinking it's an A. And is it an A to them? Is it that you're teaching a 5th grade teacher teaching a 6th grade standard, and that's how they're exceeding it? Are they going deeper in the standard? So just that is really communicated to parents and to all the educators, so everyone's on the same page, because it gets confusing.
I absolutely agree, and this is the first step in a process, because this is setting us up through the RCD process, creating standards-based curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So absolutely, it needs to be communicated very well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. A second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passed.
Thank you.
Okay, so we already went through board comments. Superintendent, I believe, has already spoken, and we're going to future board agenda items. S1, special board meeting, board governance, board bylaws, 9005, governance standards, and 9010, public statements. Kobe Pizzati. Future, right. Future, exactly. And then we have S2, governing board handbook.
That was also me.
Oh, that was, okay, so that'll be, okay.
I didn't know when we wanted to address that. Do we want to address it at the special board meeting?
I believe so. Uh-huh.
So then we should make note.
Your mic. Trustee Pizzati.
We should make note to put it under the special board meeting for time to address.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And mind you, it only has my comments because it was mine and Alicia's, but now, it's only mine. So if somebody else wants to add comments to address the board handbook, please do so.
Okay, thank you. And
I also want to make note that it's something that fell off and that I think it's important. I'm not sure what happened to the FICMAT request, that even though Trustee Cruz is not on here, on the board anymore, that was on an agenda.
Okay, very
so
good.
on process, on our handbook says that if any board member puts it on, then it's curious.
All right.
If the board's interest is still to have staff do the analysis for all of the FICMAT reports, we can certainly do that, and we can also make them available.
I think we should, I'd prefer maybe a conversation or piece later, because I've read through the FICMAT reports. They're are posted, and so if of what capacity is for staff, we can all read a FICMAT report, or to have a conversation on that, of what that looks like, how much staff time it takes, and do we want all the pieces, one piece? I think it would be a good conversation to have. And there was a conversation about looking at finance through FICMAT. We have a new person coming on. What is their input with that lens? So I think maybe a conversation about it before directing staff, because I don't know what the capacity is or what that looks like.
And plus, we get audits done regularly. So, I would be very interested into hearing, like I said, our new CBO, and what they have a chance to analyze what our district looks like.
What are we looking at?
No.
And Linda, I do have.
So I don't know that it's necessary to go with a FICMAC right now, but if we postpone for a little bit and have a conversation about it, then I think that might be better.
Okay, I'm getting what am I seeing?
This topic is not on the agenda.
Right, correct. We
So
can't
put it on.
That's my point. My point is, can we put it on the agenda? Like, my point is, can we put it back on the agenda to actually talk about how to approach the FICMAT? Exactly. Like, that is my point. Thank you all.
That's okay. And then Linda,
I'm like, yes, that's so that is my point. Can we? That is my point. And so, can we put it on a future agenda just to determine how we're going to move forward with this, with the new
Fill out a blue
business,
slip.
yes, thank you. Sorry that we continue to talk. So I know that we often go past 10 o'clock and maybe we're trying to fill time.
Okay.
So, yes, that is my point. I would like us to actually put it back on the agenda to figure out what we're going to do with that, all this information that's out there and our new person coming in.
Okay,
Thank
really
you.
quick. And I want to point someone else to the 2x2 since Alicia's no longer here, so that's something that, for future agenda, right? So that being said.
And the Yolo County School Board.
Oh, yes, thank you. And the Yolo County School Board,
Yeah, Association.
because she was the rep.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So now let's move to adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.